we have been researching and writing about the paranormal professionally for about 7 years now. We have 6 seasons of our podcast and 1 book under our belts that I, of course, did not bring with me, but they're at our table. And then we've been involved and interested in the paranormal a long time.
Yeah, forever. For a very long time.
Approximately forever. We've both had some paranormal experiences growing up. We've both just really been into it for a while, and we are very lucky that we get to do it part-time professionally. We do still have regular jobs, unfortunately, but part-time professionally. So yeah, that's a little bit about us if you're unfamiliar. To give a tiny bit of our credentials and why on earth you should sit here and listen to us talk about ghosts.
Not just ghosts this time.
Not just ghosts this time. Sorry, monsters. It's normally ghosts. This time it's monsters.
Yep. So first to get started, we're going to give a little history on the Great Lakes because it's wild. The beginnings of the lakes go back millions of years, as you may have guessed, to about the time North America split from Pangaea is when we start to get the Great Lakes. They don't really start filling up with water and getting their shapes until about 14,000 years ago. And they're quote-unquote finish, kind of as we know them today, about 3,000 years ago. It's like Stonehenge, older than the Great Lakes. Pyramids, older than the Great Lakes. Great Lakes are very young as we know them today.
Yeah.
And for the record, humans were working on written language, building Stonehenge pyramids. Oh, and Kay wants us to know mammoths were going extinct.
I'd like you to know that.
Yeah, unfortunately, and mammoths did see the Great Lakes. The earliest known assassination had occurred, which was Pharaoh Teddy, if you're interested.
That guy right there?
Yep.
Earliest known recorded assassination. I didn't know that was a thing, but it is.
Yep. And the Great Lakes were still filling up with water during all of this.
Yep, they were still forming into the shapes that we know them.
Yep.
The stickers on all of our cars.
I think I have 2 of them on my car.
Correct. That's why I love them. As a girl from LA, love that. Love that.
No jellyfish.
So in total, there are 5: Lake Superior, Michigan, Huron, Erie, and Ontario. They're possibly not really lakes. Don't get mad yet. But freshwater seas, kind of. It depends on who you ask.
Yeah.
Atlas Obscura did a great article on the question in which the answer was, sorta. Quoting from the article titled, "Are the Great Lakes Really Seas?" Quote, "Each lake also has a specific name, but when talking generally about one of the Great Lakes, Anishinaabe people say Gitchigami, Gitchigami, or," and I didn't practice any of these names beforehand like I should have, Chigameing, depending on dialect, which all translate roughly to big or great body of water. Look at that. It's giant. It's water.
Basically.
Whether that means lake or sea, The Decolonial Atlas, which Michael Wasagizig Price, a Wisconsin-based traditional ecological knowledge specialist for the Great Lakes Indian Fish and Wildlife Commission, mouthful, cites, refers to the Great Lakes as the 5 freshwater seas, but he takes exception to that.
To continue, quote, "As for the word sea, I believe this to be a colonial word that was brought here by Europeans," he says. "Today, some Anishinaabe people refer to the Great Lakes as inland seas, but this is a new evolution in our language. English is impacting how we use our indigenous language," end quote. So it's just an interesting bit of information from the people who have been here a lot longer than we have.
Yeah.
So calling them lakes or seas doesn't have a huge impact either way. It just depends on how you're using them. If you call them a lake, some people think, oh, it's just a nice, gentle lake, and then they die.
You'll notice a theme in this presentation.
The lakes are very big, they're very dangerous, and they are also freshwater.
Yeah.
Basically. But yeah, people take the lakes very seriously in both what they consider them, and yeah, people die constantly. You'll get to hear some quotes about that later.
Yay! So first up is Lake Superior. It is the largest lake in the world by surface area and the 3rd largest by volume. According to Wikipedia, quote, "There is enough water in Lake Superior to cover the entire landmass of North and South America to a depth of 30 centimeters or 12 inches. That's insane. It's a lot of water. I was like, well, we're putting that in the presentation. That's crazy. It is also some of the most dangerous water in North America. Again, you will die.
Lots of people died. So there are only around 350 ships at the bottom of Superior. Only.
Trust me, it gets worse.
A lot of water. The most well-known is the Edmund Fitzgerald. I think most people know that one, the song.
There it is.
Yep, it is.
Before.
Yes. And Superior is huge, as we just said. The storms can pop up pretty much out of nowhere, hence the ship. And waves can have reached up to 28.8 feet high as of 2017.
So, like, it's gotten worse. We know that. Climate change.
Yes, it's gotten worse.
Yeah.
There are rip currents, just like you find in the ocean, some really nasty ones. In fact, sometimes they're worse here than in the ocean. And if you're not an experienced swimmer, you can get caught up, taken out to deeper water.
Yeah.
Not necessarily to sea. And as the water is so cold in Lake Superior, the bacteria needed for decomposition cannot grow. So the bodies of those lost in shipwrecks are still there. It's only fair that we begin with the largest Great Lake and talk about its mythical inhabitants now instead of its very much real recent ones.
Instead of all the people that died.
Yeah, you know. We'll only talk about a few people that died. It's fine.
There's some haunted wrecks you can dive there, too.
Yeah.
So.
There's haunted wrecks in all the Great Lakes that you could dive. I would not. The first is Mishipeshu. The name of this creature has many different romanizations of its name because it has been transliterated from multiple dialects into both French and English across about 500 years, which complicates things a bit for us Anglophones today, especially me. I can't pronounce English words. So, it is usually translated into English as underwater panther, but also sometimes as great panther, great lynx, and great lion. Note, panthers are not native to the Great Lakes region, but lynxes are, and lions died out in America only about 10,000 years ago. So they all kind of make sense.
Yep. So Imishipeshu is commonly described as having the head and paws of a big cat, like the Canada lynx, perhaps. People have put that forward. But it's covered in scales and has sharp pointed spikes running down its back and tail.
Diagram.
Like that.
Being underwater creatures, Mishipeshuag, our best guess at the pluralization of the name, are said to be enemies of thunderbirds, which are creatures of air. According to Chris Bolgiano in her book Mountain Lion, An Unnatural History of Pumas and People, quote, at least as late as the 1950s, the prairie band of Potawatomi Indians performed their traditional ceremony to placate the underworld panther and maintain balance with the thunderbird. Bolgiano describes the Mishipeshu as, quote, a composite monster with the body and tail of a mountain lion, ardens of a deer, scales of a snake, feathers of birds of prey, and parts from other animals as well. So what we understand to be a chimera.
Yeah. And then also, according to Bolgiano, I'll just quote from her book, the underwater panther was often a malevolent creature that punished human transgressions by calling up fierce storms to swamp canoes and flood towns, but it would be beneficent as well, leaving meggers of shining copper on the shoreline to reward good behavior. I have no idea what a megger is.
I don't know what a megger is.
She used a lot of words I couldn't find definitions for.
I've got old-timey words.
Oh. East of the Great Lakes, Algonquian peoples believed the underwater panther had the power to heal. Its tail was covered by copper scales, and copper was used in curing rituals. When the first Europeans offered smelted copper alloys in trade for furs, Iroquoian tribes worked them into spirals and hoops that invoked the panther's long, curving tail.
So really, if Steampunk should have a mascot.
Yeah, it's very appropriate for this area.
A Mishipeshu appears on the seal of the Canadian Museum of Civilization, along with the Inuit underwater spirit Sedna. According to the Canadian Encyclopedia, quote, the most important underwater being for the Ojibwa is the Mishipeshu, which lives in the depths of big lakes. He is the cause of waves, rapids, and whirlpools, and he even breaks ice in winter, thus claiming numerous victims, end quote. But it goes on.
Yep. It is sometimes said that the horns and scales of Mishipeshu are made of pure copper, and most indigenous populations in the Great Lakes see those aquatic monsters as the guardians of this metal. During a fight with a Mishipeshu, a youth reported that he broke a part of the monster's tail when hitting it with a paddle. This fragment was made of copper, and he kept it to acquire luck at hunting and fishing. Although Mishipeshu and the other underwater beings are essentially considered harmful, they were also necessary to the Algonquians because they gave them protection and medicine. The horned snakes and the underwater lynx were particularly dangerous, but they also secured successful hunts and an abundance of food. It was also possible to call upon their power to secure a good fish catch, although their help was mostly precious for some healings. Medicine bundles were made of snakeskin. These beings were also guardians of the Midewigun. I think I got that right. The Medewigan Lodge. Moreover, the term Mishipeshu was used as a family name, showing that this being was not only seen as harmful. You win some, you lose some.
In 1977, a man named Randy Braun may have captured the first image of the Mishipeshu. According to GreatLakes.guide, Randy was hiking through the Porcupine Mountains when he noticed something in the water.
Quote, as it moved towards me, it slowed down considerably, but was making a noticeable wake. It was strangely quiet while it snaked towards me and stopped dead in the water, right in front of me. It was big. I steadied my camera on top of the rock and fired one picture, but was afraid to move after that. The thing sat there for about 30 seconds with its huge horse-shaped head and large dark left eye staring at me. On the nose was a visible catfish-type whisker, maybe 2 feet in length and wiggling.
Yeah. The creature Randy saw is referred to in the screenshot video as Pressy. Pressy is another name for what lurks beneath the waves of Lake Superior. Often, Mishipeshu and Pressy are labeled as one and the same, and there are many stories online about encounters that use both names. Skeptics often say this monster is just a lake sturgeon, which are native to the Great Lakes and do grow to massive sizes. I would also say that seeing a 100-pound fish come out of the water in front of you counts as encountering a lake monster. There's his photo. Glad we have circles.
Yep, it was 1977. Photography was different back then. It's actually pretty clear.
Are you
for
kidding?
being from...
Paranormal photos look the exact same now.
It's kind of true. 77. Oh, bad.
That's actually not bad.
So Nanabojo.
No, there we go.
There he is.
There he is.
Nanabojo, which is also spelled many different ways, is a combination sort of trickster figure and cultural hero who features in a great many Anishinaabe traditional stories. I have an entire book full of them. In one of his stories that is retold in The Manitous, The Spiritual World of the Ojibwe by Basil Johnston, great author if you're interested in the Ojibwe.
On the Internet Archive.
Yep. Or through, like, Interlibrary Loan, or your local library.
Yeah.
He was a member of the Chippewas of Nawash Unceded First Nation. So, good source. Nanabozo tells his friend Miengun, meaning wolf, either as a cruel prank or as a flippant response, as we sometimes do, that in order to safely cross a lake during the spring thaw, he should, quote, cast a sapling on the ice that would turn into a bridge. Trusting his friend, Wolf did as he was told.
But instead of foundering in the shallows and scrambling ashore, dripping wet and howling with rage, Wolf was sucked under the ice by the current, drowned, and born into the underworld. To exact revenge on the Mishipeshu, the Great Lynx who dwelt at the bottom of the sea, for having lured and dragged Miengun to his death, Nanabojo ventured into the depths of the sea, but he found neither the Great Lynx nor his friend. Nanabojo was inconsolable for months, despite this being his fault. Someday, he vowed, he would hunt down Mishipeshu and destroy the monster in revenge for his friend's death. And then there's another
Picture of the story.
of Nanabojo in the flood.
And he's across the entire Great Lakes region. Like,
Yeah.
everyone had stories about him.
Yeah, he's basically like our region's trickster, much like there's like Coyote and
Yep.
Raven and stuff.
He's got some good stories. So Lake Superior has its very own mermaids and mermen as well.
I see you.
Aren't they?
Look,
Aren't
I
they handsome?
appreciate it, okay? Look at him. Look at those extra limbs. Come on.
Very useful. Very
Come
useful. Sometimes called by the Ojibwe Meme Gwashi.
Yeah.
They are Manitou, which is a difficult word to translate into English, surprisingly. Basil Johnston defines Manitou as mystery, essence, substance, matter, supernatural spirit, anima, quiddity, attribute, property, god, deity, godlike, mystical, incorporeal, transcendental, invisible reality.
Got that? To be a test later.
The Meme-gwashi are often described as being male and having a childlike body and a hairy face.
Sure. Why not? Sure.
But we actually have a, say, first-hand account. On November 13th, 1812, fur trader Venant Saint-Germain swore before judges of the Court of King's Bench for the District of Montreal
That in the year 1782, on the 3rd of May, when on his return to Michilimackinac from the Grand Portage, he arrived at the mouth of the Isle Pate, or Pie Island, near Fort William, Lake Superior, where he formed his encampment to stop for the night. That a little before sunset, the evening being clear and serene, deponent was returning from setting his nets and reached his encampment a short time after the sun went down. That on disembarking, the deponent happened to turn towards the lake when he observed about an acre or 3/4 of an acre distance from the bank where he stood, an animal in the water, which appeared to him to have the upper part of its body above the waist, formed exactly like that of a human being. It had the half of its body out of the water, and the novelty of so extraordinary a spectacle excited his attention and led him to examine it carefully. The body of the animal seemed to him about the size of that of a child of 7 or 8 years of age, with one of its arms extended and elevated in the air. The hand appeared to be composed of fingers exactly similar to those of a man, and the right arm was kept in an elevated position, while the left seemed to rest upon the hip. But the deponent, striking a post?
Striking a pose.
But the deponent did not see the latter, which it being kept under the water. The deponent distinctly saw the features of the countenance, which bore an exact resemblance to those of the human face. The eyes were extremely brilliant, the nose small but handsomely shaped, the mouth proportionate to the rest of the face, the complexion of a brownish hue, the ears well formed and corresponding to the other parts of the figure. The animal looked the deponent in the face with an aspect indicating uneasiness, but at the same time with a mixture of curiosity. And the deponent, along with 3 other men who were with him at the time, and an old Indian woman to whom he had given a passage in his canoe, attentively examined the animal for the space of 3 to 4 minutes. An animal which, similar to that which deponent described, had been seen by another voyageur on another occasion when passing from Pate to Tonnerre. The deponent thinks the frequent appearance of this extraordinary animal in the spot has given rise to the superstitious belief among the Indians that the god of the waters had fixed upon this for residence. Notice, however, this man never described the bottom half of said creature.
Nope. Very detailed on the top half.
Leaving me to wonder if this was not just some dude that he accidentally caught bathing in the lake, who was, of course, a mixture of uneasy and curious as to what this other guy and his team were doing in his bathing spot. I'm just throwing that out there. It could have been a merman.
It was like 300 years ago. It's fine.
It's fine.
Another possibly related water dweller is the Nibinabe, which is merman, and Nibinabekwe, mermaid, male, woman. These are associated with the Ojibwe, Algonquin, Potawatomi, and Menominee specifically. NativeLanguages.org says they are described as being, quote, shaped like mermaids with human torsos and fishtails. They are said to be frightened off by loud noises.
Just bang a pot really loud.
Yeah.
It's fine. They'll go away.
Basil
Like
Johnston's
raccoons.
book, Mermaids, Basil Johnston wrote an entire book on mermaid tales. It's great. You should read it.
It's really good. We have photos from it later.
Mermaids and Medicine Women, Native Myths and Legends is the full title. Includes, as you may have guessed from the title, mermaids. They're Nibinabe and Nibinakbekwe, though I believe he just calls them mermaids.
Yeah,
I don't
it's
think he
just
ever
mermaids.
uses the terms, but that's what he's talking about. And we'll talk more about them when we get to Lake Huron.
But before that, we have to get to Lake Michigan. Yay!
She's so deadly.
Yay! Hey, pretty.
Lake Michigan can be seen as one body of water or 2. There's all of this, we don't really know. We're just going to throw words at it in science.
I don't know. It's water here.
Yeah. In hydrology terms, Lakes Michigan and Huron are the same body of water connected by the straits that run between the 2 peninsulas of Michigan. These straits are the deadliest freshwater ways in the world. Told you there's going to be a lot of death.
Lots of death, guys.
It obviously is the Straits of Mackinac.
Yeah.
And the Straits has a well-reserved reputation as a dangerous area to navigate. The region is populated with rocky shoals and shallows that place ships in peril. Perhaps even worse are the storms that can enter the narrow straits and quickly magnify wind and waves. Over the years, large numbers of ships have foundered in the straits. Many have yet to be discovered.
Yep. We actually don't know how many ships are down there.
And it's a relatively narrow span. I think, the bridge is like 5 miles long?
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, 148
And we don't know
square
how many
miles.
ships are down there.
Yeah. Yep.
They're deadly.
Yep. Yep.
There are more than 100 shipwrecks within the 148 square miles.
Of just the
Of
straits.
just straits.
Just that.
Yep.
Just that. You see that in the picture? Shipwrecks everywhere.
Yep.
Littered.
More than 100. Almost one per square mile.
That's messed up.
Yep. So yeah, cannot stress. These are very dangerous.
And then we were like, let's just build a bridge right over it.
Yeah.
Let's just
I
cover
mean, it was better than the ferry that was there before.
That's true.
So.
Lake Michigan is the only Great Lake to be entirely contained within the U.S. We share the rest of them with Canada. It's the deadliest of the 5. In 2024, there were 91 drownings total across the Great Lakes, and 51 of those were in Lake Michigan.
We're number 1.
Yay! Yay!
That's near where I grew up too. I grew up near Lake Michigan.
So please be careful, dear God. This summer, please be careful.
Please
If you
be
are in the
careful.
area, be careful. It's also home to the largest freshwater sand dunes in the world, which I think is pretty cool. And it's home to the Lake Michigan Triangle, which is like a slightly smaller and freshwater version of the Bermuda Triangle. Weird stuff has happened in, around, on it. It is a very strange place. We cover those in the podcast, Haunted Mitten. Oh.
Full circle.
Full circle.
I'm going to go back to Chris Bolgiano. She makes a link between horned serpents and Mishipeshu in her book Mountain Lion, An Unnatural History of Pumas and People, which we'll be listing all these resources at the end.
Yeah.
In Mexico, a feathered and horned serpent and a jaguar and bird's eye and serpent's tongue were fundamental religious images.
Yep.
Per Adam Benedict in his article, Folklore Profile, The Monster of Lake Michigan.
Legends involving the great horned serpent vary from tribe to tribe, but when all is said and done, they are pretty much describing roughly the same thing. A creature is said to somewhat resemble a huge dragon or snake covered in large scales with prominent horns and long teeth. While these beasts could occasionally be found on land, they were most often found lurking within the dark water of both lakes and rivers. They were oftentimes viewed as being supernatural in nature with an ability to control the weather, shapeshift, turn invisible, and bestow magical abilities on those lucky enough to defeat them in battle. Their horns and scales were believed to possess great power and were widely sought after by those brave enough to go looking for the beasts. While great horned serpents could be found within almost any body of water, the most powerful ones were believed to call the Great Lakes home. Yeah! Go us again. Woo!
We get the good stuff. So, according to nativelanguages.org, quote, Misiginebeg is an underwater horned serpent common to the legends of most Algonquian tribes, which is said to lurk in lakes and eat humans. Their sworn enemies are the thunderbirds. Again, this is a common theme. Who can kill them with their bolts of thunder. I do question bolts of thunder, but it's fine.
It's
The name Michiginebeg literally means great serpent in the Anishinaabe languages. So again, there's like little differentiations between the dialects, but that's the word you typically see.
Oh, I don't know that I included the tattoo. There's a tattoo design that's really cool on Instagram that we'll link when we post this on our YouTube.
Yeah.
But I don't think I have it in this slide. No! Okay.
So it was really hard to find art for a lot of these, and I came across a tattoo on Instagram, and
really
how he described it, the artist described it as, the Michiginebig is mostly an Algonquian tale of a horned serpent that lurks in our lakes and eats humans. Michiginebig becomes more powerful if they gain another head.
I don't know if that means if they eat one.
I'm assuming
If they
grow.
attach one?
Yeah, gain another head. And that was the only place I found that specific tidbit of gaining the head.
Yeah.
So, yeah, fun creature.
Oh, he's a fun guy. Stay out of Lake Michigan. Don't go there.
Yeah, everyone's stressed. They eat people.
They eat people. As we said, connected to Lake Michigan by the streets is Lake Huron. Although only the third largest Great Lake by volume, it is home to the gigantic Georgian Bay and over 30,000 islands. It was also the first Great Lake to be explored by Europeans, which is a wild thing to think about since Lake Ontario is so much closer to the Atlantic than Huron is. About 9,000 years ago, the water level was much lower and a land bridge connected Lower Michigan and Ontario called the Alpena Amberley Ridge, which is like in that rendering down there, that allowed a huge migration of caribou across the two land masses. Archaeologists discovered 60 structures made by Paleo-Indian peoples, showing how they herded and hunted the caribou using the narrow land bridge to basically funnel them in to make the kill easier. That same area now contains Manitoulin Island, the largest freshwater island in the world, which in itself contains a lake, which contains an island, and so on and so forth.
Lake Huron's fun.
It's fun.
Lake Huron has what's called Shipwreck Alley near the Thunder Bay National Marine Sanctuary. This area of the lake contains over 1,000 ships that met their end at the bottom of the lake.
Yeah.
Just this one area.
Yeah.
So don't mess with the Great Lakes.
Hey, don't go there.
Don't. Just be very, very careful.
So yeah, some of those shipwrecks.
You can go see a lot of them.
You can go
If you
dive
want.
those. I don't know why you
In a
would.
dry suit.
Yeah, yes, because it's also freezing. Yeah.
Yes, it's very cold.
Yes.
You can dive there, but you might die.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So good luck.
Have fun with that.
Have fun with that. While Superior had one or two mermaid sightings, Lake Huron seems to be their preferred place to swim. It is slightly warmer. Or that, maybe like Saginaw Bay and the Crook of Michigan's Thumb has like the right levels of pH. I'm not entirely sure what's best for mermaids. I should ask the sirens.
Yeah, I know.
For whatever reason, they have chosen to call Huron home. There have been stories of merfolk or something like them since the Ojibwa first began to live along the shores.
So like 1,000 years.
So like forever.
One story told in Basil Johnston's book is of a young Anishinaabe man who let his curiosity get the better of him. Did say he was a young man. He was told to never go to what we now call Manitoulin Island because the mermaids lived there and they were dangerous. Being a young man, he went anyway. Obviously.
Yeah, of course he did.
And creeping up on them, he jumped on one and tried to pin her down, like you do. But she dove into the water and he was forced to let go. Aww.
Sad. A year later, curious again, he returned to Manitoulin Island and discovered the mermaid had an infant. Knowing it was his,
Yep.
because he had touched her skin,
That's how it works, right?
I question their sex education choices. He stole the mermaid back to his home, marrying her. Said, hey, you have my kid. We're married now. More shenanigans ensued. But ultimately, the man and mermaid stayed together. It's actually funnily similar to European Selkie tales.
Yeah, I was just thinking that.
Man sees supernatural water creature. Man steals supernatural water creature. Shenanigans ensue. It just seems to be all over the world. Yeah. The Pine Barrens Institute tells a very similar story to this one, but from the 1960s. Different. We don't go into the sex education of this young man. Thank God. Another young man named Sheridan happened upon mermaids on a family trip to Charity Island, located in Saginaw Bay.
He says, with nothing to do but toss rocks and walk the shore, the young boy proceeded to lumber along without a care in the world. But after a few minutes, the boy realized he wasn't as alone as he thought. For there, out in the water, were 3 beautiful young women, laughing and playing as if nobody else was around. They had long hair, fair skin, and from what Sheridan could tell, 0 clothes.
None. He watched until sunset when he met back up with his family at a bonfire and told them what he saw. I don't know if he mentioned the zero close. It does not say that. According to the story, his family teased him about it and didn't believe a word. Quote, some even went so far as to claim he had probably seen the ghosts of girls who had drowned in the lake from years long ago, because there was no way he had stumbled upon a situation like the one he was describing.
Must be ghosts.
Which seems weird and slightly cruel. No, you didn't see nude women playing in the surf. You saw the ghosts of dead women playing in the surf.
Perfect sense. Perfect sense. I don't know why anyone would find that confusing.
Thanks, you weird family.
Well, Sheridan actually saw them each time he returned to the island. It was not just a one-time thing. And he noted how odd the whole thing was. No way. They were always the same women in pretty much the same spot, and they never brought anything with them that they left on shore, so he didn't notice any clothes again.
He's got that point nailed down. They had zero.
They had no clothes.
There's nothing there.
And perhaps you can guess where this goes. He got obsessed, venturing to the island himself over and over just to watch the trio, who over time became a duo and then a single.
I know, right? That's sad. Again, why does it keep getting worse? Yeah. Eventually, an old man of the island found Sheridan watching the lone woman play in the surf. He wasn't surprised to find the young man there and told him everything he knew about the nymphs of the island. They were fine to watch from a distance, but getting any closer would result in some bad times for the boy. And then, for some crazy reason, the old man told Sheridan how to capture one and hold it under his will, and then went off for the walk with his wife. I don't understand.
Here's what not to do, step by step.
Why? I know. That's true.
Yeah.
Hey, don't ever do this, wink, wink.
Surprisingly, Sheridan claims he did nothing with that information. He went to see a therapist instead.
Thank God. Thank God, because all the adults in his life are crazy.
Yeah, not what I was expecting from that story.
No,
Good on him.
At all.
But the mermaids got to do their thing, and then he got to be alive. So win-win.
With some new crazy ideas in his head. As we do, we're all steampunks. We love old maps. Don't offend me. As we slide on down the Michigan coast, we come to Lake Erie. Erie is the shallowest and therefore warmest of the Great Lakes, and according to Margaret Atwood, the Margaret Atwood,
yep,
it has the most breathtaking thunderstorms in all of Canada and is known as the thunderstorm capital of Canada. Notably, Lake Erie was sometimes used as a crossing point for enslaved people fleeing to Canada. Reading from an article in the Ottawa Citizen from 2006, quote, when fugitives arrived on this shore, Canada stood roughly 60 miles across Lake Erie. In a land where slavery was abolished in 1833, runaways hoped to leave their former shackles, both mental and physical, behind them. During the 19th century, Lake Erie was bustling with ships carrying passengers and goods to Canadian and American ports. Some also carried an illegal cargo, fugitives hoping to forge new lives in a strange land.
Speaking of ships...
Can you guess? Can you guess?
There are over 1,000 on the bottom of Lake Erie. Yeah, I would expect more because it's shallow.
You would think.
And these thunderstorms, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah, don't mess with the Great Lakes. Again,
we will keep saying that. Please don't mess with the Great Lakes.
Some had long careers without sinking. Also, they didn't all sink. There were plenty of steamships sailing between cities on Lake Erie from the late 1800s to about the 1950s. They had a really good run on the Great Lakes. They really did. And Lake Erie played an essential role in Prohibition. Only 60 miles across.
Again.
The U.S. and Canada are just close into several spots. And again, back to Margaret Atwood.
It's so close.
Love her. She said a great deal of alcohol crossed Erie during Prohibition. Mobster corpses were frequently dumped into the Detroit River to wash up on the beaches of Pelee Island.
Gross.
Yeah.
However, could some of those lobsters have been eaten by Lake Erie's monster? Who knows?
And that monster is Bessie.
Oh, there's another.
We really like naming things after the Loch Ness Monster for some reason.
There's another cool map I found from 1896 of routes from slave states to Canada.
There's a lot of them.
There's a lot. Thank God.
Yeah, we've already mentioned Pressy and Lake Superior. Now we have Bessie. Bessie's probably the more well-known too.
There's no art we could use, so I found a still from Cat Dogs. That's art.
Yeah.
That's high art.
The first sighting was apparently in 1793 when the captain of the sloop Felicity, some sources say Bay Rat, but more of them say Felicity, so we're going to say Felicity.
And I like the name Felicity for a boat way more than the Bay Rat.
That's prettier. So he was out duck hunting in the shallows of Lake Erie one day, and according to Great Lakes Guide, an enormous serpent had started thrashing around near his boat, having been startled by the gunshots. He reported that the creature was huge, easily over 5 meters long, though it disappeared before he could get a better look at it.
But Bessie may also be another creature of First Nations myth. NativeLanguages.org tells us the Onyara are large horned serpents that live in and around the Great Lakes. Some stories saying they have poisonous breath. There is a story of a young woman this time, in search of a husband, finding no one to her satisfaction, except one man, tall, dark, and handsome, who came to her door at night to ask for her hand. She went with him because, of course, she did. Come on, look at him. But that's like the theme of today. Is like, well, of course they did. But as he led her through the dark toward the water, she got more and more nervous. They got to his home along the water, and she couldn't sleep. Everything made noises she didn't understand, and she was terrified.
The next morning, her new husband asked her to put on a dress that is adorned with wampum, but it smelled like fish, and she refused.
It's gross.
Yeah.
It's gross.
He had to leave and warned her not to go outside for any reason. But a giant horned serpent slithered in and stared at her while he was gone.
It was just like...
And stared and stared. And finally slipped back out.
And then just left.
Just left. She followed it to the door and saw that outside was covered in the same giant serpents. The young woman hid in the lodge thinking of a way out. But she fell asleep.
Yeah.
And she dreamed...
It's like a fairy tale, right? She fell asleep.
She just fell asleep. What else are you going to do? She can't leave. But she dreamed of an old man who said if she could climb a nearby cliff without looking back, he would help her get home. She took the deal, raced out of the house, and climbed the cliff, and while the serpents were slithering around the shore beneath...
The woman got to the top, and Heno, the thunder spirit of the Iroquois and Seneca people, helped her up. From a folklore website with many indigenous stories, quote, the lightning flashed and the thunder drums rolled across the sky. In the river, the serpents tried to escape, but the bolts of Heno struck them. Then the storm ended, and the girl stood there, a gentle rain washing over her face as the thunderer looked down on her. You are very brave, my child, he said. You have helped me rid the earth of those monsters. Perhaps I may call on you again, for your deed has given you power. End quote.
But were the monsters actually destroyed?
Probably not.
There have been many sightings of unusually large serpents around Lake Erie. In fact, in 1990, there were a slew of encounters around Cedar Point Amusement Park in Sandusky, Ohio, which probably a lot of us have been to. According to Chaitan Noir, in her book Lake Monsters and Odd Creatures of the Great Lakes, 5 separate groups witnessed something cigar-shaped in the water, much, much bigger than any normal Great Lakes snake. Most of the reports claimed the thing was 30 to 45 feet long. Some said it had a snake-like head. 3 out of 5 sightings occurred in September of 1990, meaning Bessie might have been up to something.
That's just a really good year for her.
Yeah, busy month. Busy month.
The reports of the Onyara have dropped off since the 90s, but that might not mean they're gone forever. We're interested to see if anything new pops up in the next decade or so, but that was the last for that guy.
Erie may also be home to something a little smaller that enjoys the taste of human flesh. The Erie Chomper has gotten bites out of a few people since 2001.
Yeah, it's new.
It's a new one. It leaves circular chunks missing from swimmers' legs.
Thanks. Yeah.
Yummy.
Stay out of the Great Lakes.
This included a young boy who was rushed to a nearby hospital. And the doctor claimed it wasn't a lamprey, which is what a lot of people, including Kay,
I thought it was a lamprey.
think of.
Yeah.
But it could have been a bowfin.
They're big.
They're very territorial. They're aggressive. They'll defend their nests viciously. But mystery's not been solved. Nobody knows what bit this kid. Nobody knows what's biting these people. Some people think it's a baby Oniare or Bessie.
Yeah.
But no idea. No one knows what's biting people.
Nope, there's just something that just bites people's legs. The lake.
Bad enough to send you to the ER.
And we can't forget about the storm hag. S.E. Schlosser. There's nothing I could legally use. Okay.
We tried.
S.E. Schlosser, in her book Spooky Pennsylvania, tells of a siren-like hag in the waters of Erie. She lures sailors to their deaths among the waves. Quote, pale and green of skin, her yellow eyes shine luminously in the dark, and her thin, long arms wrap themselves around the unwary, while foul green pointed teeth sink into soft flesh and sharp nails at the end of long, bony fingers stroke you into the deepest sleep there is. It's Meg from Legend.
Right.
Oh my God. Legend just happened in Pennsylvania.
Oof. Sometimes she summons thunderstorms along the lake and pulls sailors in when they're trapped on the water. Other times she waits for the storm to pass, and once the sailors have relaxed, she strikes, spewing forth lightning and wind-like venom. Schlosser says that there's only one subtle warning the hag is upon you. She sings while the winds are howling. Quote, come into the water, love, dance beneath the waves, where dwell the bones of sailor lads inside my saffron cave.
Love it.
Enticing. I would absolutely go towards that voice.
God, no! Krista, no! We have a podcast to do.
She's got us.
Yeah. Check out that cave.
And though it isn't connected directly to the others except through lake rivers, we couldn't talk about the Great Lakes without including Lake Ontario. Ontario is the downstream sibling of the other four lakes. It feeds into the St. Lawrence River, which feeds directly into the Atlantic Ocean. Connecting the lakes Ontario and Erie is the Niagara River, upon which Niagara Falls sit.
Despite being the smallest of the Great Lakes, Ontario holds more water than Lake Erie. And it rarely freezes over due to its immense depth. The last time it froze over was in 1934.
Yeah.
Almost
and it
100
never
years ago.
will again.
Yeah, right. In fact, according to a few fun fact websites, because I had to look them up, Ontario is about the perfect temperature for most of the year to keep a six-pack of beer. Keep it cold, and it doesn't freeze over. So just keep your beer in there. It's great. From Cottage Life, in July 2017, one beachgoer even discovered vintage beer bottles that may have been kept cool in the lake for around 30 years.
Don't drink that, though.
Yeah, I don't know if they
that.
drank it, but
That's bad. Don't drink that.
apparently this is a common thing. People kept their beer cold in the lake.
Ooh, haunted ghost beer.
I mean, I'd try it.
I
would
Yeah, I
absolutely
might.
try it. I don't
Yeah.
like beer, but I'd try it.
Lake Ontario may also be a key player in solving an age-old mystery of who the first outsiders were to visit North America. In 1929, a very, very old spearhead was found on Sodus Bay on Charles Point in New York after a horrendous storm ravaged much of the coastline. Believed to be 700 to 1200 years old, the spearhead is most likely Norse in origin. It has been the subject of controversy for years and may just be a clue to knowing for certain that the Norse came to trade and do business with the indigenous peoples of North America long before the mainland Europeans got here.
Speaking of before Europeans got here, one of Lake Ontario's monsters comes from native legend, like many of the ones we've talked about today. For generations, the Haudenosaunee, ooh, that's a long one. Haudenosaunee.
Thank you.
Sweet. Again, that's another one that has like 20 different spellings.
Yeah.
Yep. It's the for generations, the Haudenosaunee and Anishinaabe nations have told of a race of giant serpents in the lake Common theme.
God, we got a lot of.
The Seneca have a legend on Gassianditha, I think was how the website said it. A dragon-like snake able to fly and breathe fire.
Love it.
Sounds
Dragon.
a little familiar. Yep. It's a dragon-like snake able to fly and breathe fire. One of its origin stories says it came from a meteor, so you might hear it called the meteor dragon if you look it up.
And you will hear me call it the meteor dragon because its proper name is too hard for me to pronounce.
And that just sounds cool. That's awesome. It soars over Lake Ontario on a stream of fire, much like the meteor it came from. And since the first Europeans came to the area, there have been even more sightings of something strange in Lake Ontario.
Perhaps the first European to come in contact with the meteor dragon was Jacques Cartier on one of his missions in the 1530s to map the St. Lawrence River. According to the website Bin Nagami, I hope I pronounced that right, it's having a snack, okay? Cartier wrote in his journal that he and his crew saw, quote-unquote, a great finned snake in the water, moving by using its large fins, which I believe is actually just a fish. I think that's how you describe a fish. Now I'm thinking about it, like this. Long fins, fish. Okay. They attempted to catch the thing, but it evaded them. When Cartier explained what he had seen to the First Nations people in the area, they told him the snake was, pronounce that again?
Gassianditha.
Thanks.
Is what the wave file said.
Was what the wave file said. This was just the beginning of sightings in Lake Ontario.
Yeah, I like this one. Reading from the website County Moments, quote, in 1805, 4 fishermen near Kingston, Ontario mistook what they thought was an overturned rowboat for a horrifying encounter. As they approached, the boat transformed into a colossal snake, propelling them to paddle fervently towards shallow waters along the shore. Their dread only deepened as the serpent continued to glide back and forth, seemingly watching their every move.
It's like, how dare you people. Kingston became the home of the meteor dragon, and the majority of sightings throughout the decades have happened in the waters around the city. The creature has affectionately become known as Kingsty. It was even the subject of a hoax back in 1934 when 3 men dressed up a barrel and attached it to a rope to terrorize swimmers and boaters around Cartwright Bay near Kingston. They didn't confess that until 1979.
It was a good joke.
It's a good joke. But obviously not all sightings can be attributed to these hooligans, considering how early even the Europeans had encounters and how far back the Seneca and other indigenous folks have been telling stories of these creatures.
Yeah. Now, could they all be myths or misidentified animals, hoaxes, mistakes? Sure. It could be a combination of these. We don't know. But the Great Lakes are home to a large species of fish like the sturgeon. Like, they can get very big. There are also mammals like river otters who can also get pretty big, especially back before industrial times.
Yeah.
But it's hard to dismiss hundreds, if not thousands, of stories that date back like at least 1,000 years that we can document. I'm sure they go back further. There's no reason they wouldn't. They've been passed down person to person, community to community forever. There could be something or some things lurking in the depths of the lake that we haven't found yet. Or they just could be legends, paranormal stories, encounters. No idea. Can't really categorize them. They're fun.
Just really happy it's nothing that we can classify as eldritch.
Fair.
The Great Lakes are deadly enough. I don't need actual horrors in them as well.
In the end, it's up to each of us to determine what we believe, what we think is out there. But it's pretty cool that so many different people across many, many, many miles of land have shared stories, have similar stories between lots of different cultures. And cautionary tales about the dangers of water. Obviously, these lakes are deadly.
Have we stressed that enough? Are we good? Do we have to say it again?
Thousands of shipwrecks. Thousands and thousands of shipwrecks. Mostly of European. And who knows how many canoes are down there. Though canoes are much better for sailing the Great Lakes than European-style ships.
Oh, yeah.
We'll say that. They knew what they were doing. There's a reason they built canoes.
Yeah, that's about it. Thank you for coming to this presentation. We have our bibliography that I did my
Yeah,
best
if you want to
to
check out the books.
get down to under 7 pages.